Welcome to Discerning News, where we bring you current stories from a bigger picture perspective. The purpose is to inspire clarity and enthusiasm for your unique journey.
And welcome to Discerning News. And this time around, we thought we'd do something special. We're on our 11th session,
One,
right?
one, one, one.
11th session, and we thought we'd do something a little bit in view of that and the all the inspiration what we've been working through. We thought we'd actually go back through the last 10 sessions and just go over some of the highlights and the key areas and what that has meaning for us. And so we're going to take this opportunity this time to kind of go around and cover the not only the inspiration that came through the news and what we got out of it. So going around, what would you say some of the big picture for you before we get into the specific
Yeah.
stories? Anything you want to share about this last 10 sessions that we've done?
Well, I think it's been interesting because do you hear the airplane? It's overhead. It's coming in hot. I don't know if you guys can hear the airplane on there, but we have an airplane that flies over. Anyway, the last 10 weeks has been very fast moving. I've noticed it's been very inspirational. It's been very full on. And then this week, it's been different. So that's why I'm really excited about this week and doing this special different episode around, some news and some things we covered, but also what's going on with the energy.
Yeah.
Because things are definitely changing. So that's my 2 cents and an airplane flying overhead worth.
Your big picture before we get started?
Well, another way of saying it is every week I, found a story that I wanted to talk about where that really kind of struck me, or at least a couple, or, usually one. And this week I looked at a number of things and nothing really grabbed me except for one that I will talk a little bit about. And so I knew something was going on. And I'm looking forward to kind of regrouping, what we talked about earlier, which was just the energy behind everything, because as you know, the purpose is not really for us to get into the ideologies or who struck John or the competition of who made the great point or who's winning or who's losing. It's more an observation of energy and bringing it back to myself and how I relate to, what I also see in a bigger scale.
Yeah, and for me, it's very similar in that this week, a lot of the oxygen has gotten sucked up with the latest things with Ukraine and the American, president sharing. So all that has just really gotten pulled a lot of the news cycles. So a lot of things have been dropped. So the energy's definitely changed. So I think it's been really apropos that we've decided to do something like this where we get to share on the bigger picture. There are a few things that I'm going to share that still stand out to me, some news stories that I found. But big picture wise, I think this is my week has been very similar in that there's definitely a change out there for me. And talking to other people of like mind, just feeling the shifting happening, and both in pluses and minuses to that. So I think it's going to be a great way to just round up our discerning news this week and talk about from the big picture and where we're at in the last 10 weeks. So with that in mind, Tom, why don't you open
Kick
with,
it off, buddy.
Yeah, kick it off with what are some of the key things that you'd like to share about our whole series here?
The ongoing story about the three branches of government, the checks and balances. I've noticed since we brought that story up and this, how people are kind of stressed when something new comes up, and on both sides of the political aisle, the Republicans get stressed when the Democrats don't cooperate, and the Democrats get freaked out when the Republicans, move off in the direction that's more aligned with Trump, who's in their party and the head of their party. So, but it was just like we said, that the legal system, for example, is going to which is a check in the whole check and balance. Is you have those three branches of government: legislative, executive, and the judiciary. And it's all happening. And on some of those decisions are going, say, Trump's way, and some of those decisions are going more the Democrats' way. And through that system that we have, we work out, we hopefully arrive at a fair, ending point, and which reflects the will of the republic or the democracy that we've got. So that's what's been on my mind. But I'm getting to this point where I notice that the competition energy,
Right.
what we might refer to as the one-upmanship, of, oh, he said that to her, and oh, she said this to him, and oh, he, and this, depending on who you agree with, you might say, or where your preferences are, it's easy to kind of get, oh, we won. But I'm actually finding it a bit boring, because we were sharing earlier, even like, titles of YouTube episodes, and or Rumble episodes, or, headlines that people create anymore. They put it in a really stimulating way, so that to stimulate my emotions. And I thought to myself, spiritually, a lot of that, as this proceeds, as the new administration proceeds and the changes in government proceed, and the toing and froing and back and forth and so forth, what does it have to do with my daily life? It's great for me to be aware of it, but I'm not there. What I wanted to say was, I'm noticing that from a spiritual perspective, there's no fulfillment in that kind of competition, because it's not about me living my thrust. It's about these people, one-upmanship. And honestly, from what I know about energy, and, thoughts are real and thoughts are energy, that the power of positive thinking and positive, loving, creative thought is really important. And anything that's not positive, loving, or creative is really a negative thought. And negative thoughts are, they can have an energy too. So as I get caught in emotions, for the emotional thrill of who won and the back and forth, I used to even notice this when I watched my sons play basketball, and they had a ton of games all the time. And, it was really fun to see them win, but or it's really fun to go to a sports event and, get all in the hype of the crowd. And, I enjoy it. We went to a hockey game recently. However, I always feel a little bit of a letdown when it's over, whether we won or lost, whether my team won or lost. There's always a little bit of this letdown. And it says to me that my, interpretation of that is that it's people like to ride the emotional thrill,
Right.
the emotional power trip, or the emotional let it all out. And that's great. I mean, it's there for a reason. In fact, we had this fellow sitting in front of us last week, Teresa will attest to, that just was yelling, and another guy had a cowbell, and, they were, and I looked at him, and he had a beer or two, and I thought, he's having a blast. He's really getting all his angst out. And, I prefer to sit there quietly and enjoy the game and watch the game, because I used to play it, and, the finer points and that kind of thing. But so I think it's all positive. But I think when it comes to the seriousness of my life, I have to be aware of that. Guys have any thoughts on that?
Yeah,
comment?
yeah. I remember when you originally brought up that story about the checks and balances is a couple of weeks ago now. And what really stood out to me with what you're sharing is that I need my own checks and balances. And the soul, the spirit, the consciousness, whatever you want to call that, that goes on, the thing that gives me life. There's always a need to progress. There's always that need to move forward. And if I'm not, I'm going to find a way to move forward. And whether I start contracting down, I'm going to find a check and balance to get myself out of that. Right. And now, sometimes I can go really far down before I start getting myself out. You have a story that you bring back up about the wrestler guy in Mexico. But the point is going off of what you're sharing about, I'm going to be, if I just get out of my way and I stop competing against everyone and everything, I will actually kind of find my way of where I need to be and when I need to be. But if I'm caught in competition, I'm going to have that inner urge, but it'll get consumed by all of the emotion, or it's going to get consumed by what I think I should be doing. And I just was regrouping the other day. I was thinking, how often do I react a certain way when someone says something? Like, I mean, there's programming because, you watch TV, you listen to radio, you grow up in school. And so, I mean, this is life. You have to live and be part of the tribe, But when somebody says certain things, I'm supposed to frown. And someone says a certain thing, I'm supposed to smile, right? And sometimes it's a good thing to do. You want to empathize and be a part and everything like that. But it's kind of like laughing at a joke that isn't funny, right? It's like I'm supposed to laugh because someone's telling a joke, but is it funny? So that reminds me, just coming full circle to what you're saying, is that check and balance for me has to be, am I on track with what I really feel? Am I on track with what I really want to be a part of? And then from there, I can maneuver, I can move up and down, left and right, whatever the need is, right? I can find my niche. But if I'm caught in that competition, boy, that's so deadly. That's so, for the sensitive, for the person who's doing personal development, spiritual growth, competition of all of the, glory, devotion, and competition, of all those three, competition is so pervasive. It's so heavy. None of them are great, but boy, it's just out there because we compete for everything. So that's what I got out of it. Is just making sure I have my checks and balances.
I think it's interesting, and I'm glad you said the word competition, because I also feel that what you're sharing, Tom, is, we've gotten to this point, especially the three of us, we've shared this stuff for 10 weeks now.
Yeah.
And, we've kept a really high, energy around it. And then this week, it's like the bottom just fell out. And I feel it with other people too. Like there's, not wanting to hear any more about Trump, not wanting to hear any more about Zelensky, and not wanting to hear, like, people are to a point, and I can feel it collectively, that they're kind of tired of hearing stuff. So, that competition of, like you're saying, who's winning, who's going to get on top, and who's going to be better. And I don't like you, and I don't like you, and I like you. It's like, it's to the point where people are kind of fed up. And so it's interesting that this week, I noticed that, in some of the headlines and things that I've been noticing and just kind of hearing about, it's still trying to be like scandalous, trying to be, titillating and get your attention. And I was with a coworker this weekend. We were looking, she read something out there or said something. We have MSN, whatever it is, on our computer. So she said this title. I'm like, what is that all about? And then she read a little deeper and she goes, wait a minute, this is a fact. So it's interesting that it's like still trying to stimulate us. But I think a lot of people, and I know I'm one to say this, but I'm getting a little tired of what's going on. It's like I'm kind of over it.
Yeah.
In a big way.
Yeah. For me, a couple things occur to me in that, when I get involved in that competition, there's these feelings of doing things right or doing things wrong, rather than feeling more secure. And I've been aware of that little pressure that can creep in, during the day, doing anything. And, this is what they want to stimulate us with this, the confusion, or those that want to manipulate us or control us want us to feel that controlled. I mean, let's face it, when you're trying to get a kid to do the right thing, and, it's so easy as a parent to say, well, that was wrong, and this is right. And, some of that's necessary, for the survival of the species. But I also relate to what you're sort of saying there, Teresa, in that it's important to, just let people manage the situations that they're in. I mean, none of us are really going to know, like if we take the Zelensky thing or recent, court decisions, like I'm not really across the technicalities of why a decision was made one way or another. And, we have to, my dad used to say this, but in some ways you have to have some trust of the system that it's going to play out, unless you're directly involved with that system to ensure that there's some fairness or something. But, that's what I've been kind of aware of, is that it can also be a little addictive, like if I want, people said, well, we're addicted to the phones and so forth. And I guess there is a dopamine hit, that happens in your brain. But it's interesting how for sensitive people, we get bored of that after a while. It doesn't fulfill. The fulfillment isn't there. But there's fulfillment in me, doing a project in my office where I go through my files and I see what I've been doing for the last few years and all the people I've reached, and by following the feeling that I wanted to streamline that, now there's some fulfillment for me, kind of a thing.
Okay, so that's pretty good for the first one, huh, Tom?
Yeah.
All right.
Talk about the other story yet, or
I mean, you don't have to hit all of them,
Right. Good.
Yeah, we're good. Okay, so let's take a quick break. We'll be right back in a few moments, so stay tuned. When you gravitate towards trust, life moves with more grace and ease. One way is staying in the now and mastering your inner world, those psychic perceptions that show up through feelings, knowings, hearing, and seeing. If you are ready for more clarity for your direction in life, by honoring your time and trust, check out the link in the show notes for our next Intuition Now Masterclass, where we explore your inner abilities and support you in getting your own answers and start trusting in yourself.
Okay, we're back. And we're going to, just to remind you, we're regrouping our week in the last 10 episodes of Spiritual Perspectives, Discerning News. So who's next on the list here? Let's see. Teresa.
Okay.
Back to Teresa.
Yeah. So, for the last 10 weeks, I've been sharing primarily inspirational stories. And when I think back to some of the ones that really stood out to me, there was one about the buffaloes gaining new range. Really, that's the way to say it, right? Like really coming back into a lot more buffalo. The bees in North Australia. The gentleman who was making beehives, and then this week when I was kind of searching around for a story, and I found a bunch of stories about water and about animals, about narwhals, about dolphins, about whales, and so I just thought it was quite interesting that a lot of what I've been really gravitating towards in the last 10 weeks has been around things rejuvenating, productivity, things that are fertile, things that are growing. So for myself, it's kind of like that, balance of the intellect and the feeling. And so really coming back to, okay, in the midst of talking about some heavier subjects and things that I normally wouldn't choose to talk about, but they're great news stories. It's really great to come back and kind of gather some inspiration around some stories that I've been sharing. So want to share a bit about that inspiration for you, or what's inspired you about the last 10 weeks, Tom?
This is, probably one of the most inspirational things I saw was when President Trump gave that young boy, DJ Daniel, his Secret Service credentials. And I resonate with that because I used to be an FBI agent way back, and I know the feeling. But what was so beautiful about it, and really what I wanted to highlight was, because intellectually you can say, the kid is not a Secret Service agent. He's an honorary Secret Service agent, and he's not going to be running the detail with with the president's crew or anything. But there was, as I looked in his eyes and I watched his reaction, this look came over him like he tuned into that energy of that higher, that high calling, that high service of, fairness and protection and that law enforcement, that beautiful feeling that really is what is a motivator for many people that get involved in that service, from that service perspective. And then what struck me about it was, and I did get emotional as well, like I'm sure a lot of people did, is that, and why I feel that it was so meaningful is because that in itself, in my opinion, is a spiritual healing. He tuned into that vibration and that just felt so good to him. So there's something at the soul level that he's gaining from that, and it could be past lives or his karma or, some form of recognition because he's been collecting these honorary, police force memberships and so forth around the country. But boy, I recognized the vibration. I saw it in his eyes, and it really inspired me how important it is. I mean, it can be as simple as he doesn't have to be a real Secret Service agent. He just needed some healing, and who knows how that can spark his energy to help heal himself. We believe in that sort of thing, that it's our state of consciousness and or on what level. I haven't worked with my guidance much on it to delve into it, but that's something I observed.
So is that part of the inspiration you've had the last couple weeks or 10 weeks of feeling into that energy every week?
Yeah. Well, every time it's solutions, and we always come back to that, that it's how am I feeling? How can I flip that energy, flip that negativity or that depression or that anxiety into something positive, or just a more confident belief in myself. There's, how do you put it into words? It's hard to put into words. But your stories were similar. There was this kernel almost of, a little speck of light that got stimulated. And for example, with people doing something they love, that just helps grow, expand their aura and expand their energy.
Yeah, that's pretty much where I was going to go, is that the common denominator with all the inspirational stories that we did, really, the majority of them were all about people being in their niche, right? They just doing that whole thing about do what you love and you'll never work a day in your life type thing, and or being guided by that. Some of those inspirational stories that you brought out, that wasn't their primary job, but they did something and that built into the next thing, and that built into the next thing. And I think I said this on a previous podcast, but every single time in my life and all my ups and downs that I've accepted opportunity and to be of service, right, come at it from that perspective, every single time I've had fulfillment. Every single time. And if the times I didn't get something out of it, it's that fulfillment, a magical opportunity came from that one, right? I can count it every single time, right? Now, some of it was obscured to me initially, but then as I kept going and I kept being of service, I kept taking that opportunity, cleaning that toilet or whatever it was, all of a sudden something came out of it. So part of the inspirational stories that I always got from when you were bringing those things up was just that call to come back home, to do what I love to do. And even if I just do it as a hobby, right, to prioritize that, because in that is a calling, something inside for the soul, something inside for my consciousness, that beam of light that I am. There's something in there. And obviously I got to play the game of life and, got to make sure I got to eat. So, hey, I'll go get a job or whatever I need to do to make sure I don't get on the street or something. But if I hold true to the feeling, it will guide me. And as long as I don't get caught up talking about the competition and stuff, as long as I don't get caught up in all the would-haves and could-haves and should-haves and all that kind of stuff, and I allow myself to stay nimble inside, to stay malleable, right? I can have a strong buffer, I can have a strong boundary, but inside I've got to stay flexible, right? And I think there's a quote, I said it, I think, on the last time we were there. It's like, I need to be as shrewd as a serpent, but gentle as a dove, right? And to me, what that's saying is, I need to carry the wisdom. I need to move by wisdom, but I need to be childlike. I need to do that. And so to me, all the inspirational stories were just always coming back to that, to me coming back to saying, I can do it. There's always hope, and nothing can destroy hope. If I've got hope in my heart, I've got it made for the whole. It doesn't matter how bad from the outside that someone says I've got it. If I've got that feeling inside, I've got that joy, joy, joy down in my heart. It's a song, If I've got that, then that inspiration is infectious. Not from I'm in a fairy tale land. Mm-hmm. Like I've got to make it practical, but it's just, there's so much around me that can get pulled down by the daily life. There's so much where people are still trying to figure it out, right? And I was there once too, right? But at least I get myself out of it faster. That's the healing, that's the wisdom. But the bottom line is, what stood out to a lot of what you've been sharing, and I know this is adding a little bit to it, but you were actually going to do an inspirational story. It's an old story about a priest who funded to help create an orphanage in Mexico. It's an old story. It's been around for a long time. They even made a movie about it. Where it's this young kid who was addicted at what it was like 12 years old. He started getting addicted to drugs, and then just would switch from drugs and just became a thief and all this horrible, like the really rough stuff. And then at some point, the shock came to the system, and he was going to really get in big trouble. And that's when he made someone approached him and let him confess. That was the big thing there. Let him kind of share, and it just, that shifted his energy, and that was the story you're going to tell. And so that's just another example where he was able to take everything that he had in the past, and he wanted to create this orphanage and this area where people could educate young people. That was his order, to go educate young people that were like him, but he didn't have any money to do it. And so he took his experience and he went and became a wrestler, right? He put the big face mask on. In Mexico. That's a big thing. They put the face mask and they have the big thing. And he did that for like 20 years. And that's how he funded to build this thing. And so that's an example of all these inspirational stories that you've been bringing. And it's just a reminder to me to come back home, come back to the thing that's in my heart, the thing that's in my feelings, and just be loyal to that, but make sure I do it in such a way that's practical and I can move forward. So that's the real key for me.
Yeah. So it's interesting what comes up for both of you guys were talking about is that these stories that we've been sharing, especially for myself, the inspirational ones, they're mirrors of what we're really going through in our own private lives. Right. So for myself, going back to work and being inspired, and I feel extremely fulfilled every day. So finding counter, I guess I want to say kind of counterbalancing maybe moments where I don't feel so up, but yet, and also for you listeners out there and watchers, recognizing that there are stories that are, embedded out in the world that you can find that really can inspire you to keep going, to keep, moving forward in whatever you're doing day to day. And I think that's a big thing for me, is just recognizing that, like we said this week, this week, all of us were like, God, I can't find too much this week. I'm just not feeling inspired about it. But up until this week, man, were we inspired. Yeah. Like they came like hotcakes. It was, very quick. I was like, I want that one. And then they all meshed together. So it's interesting in this moment in time, energetically, to see what comes next out of where we're all at, not only us three, but all of you guys out there watching, listening, because collectively we're all moving through something interesting this weekend. So it'll really be interesting to see how the next few weeks start to really take shape.
Well, what really strikes me is, fulfillment is the key. We're talking about following our fulfillment
Right.
rather than, this self-denial thing or, oh, I'm going to help these people. I'm going to really suffer and I'm going to, give something up. And at the end of the day, what really drives people to their success is that feeling of fulfillment. And I can see that with the young boy in law enforcement as well. Like, I mean, think about how magical that was. Like, forget about who gave him the honor. This kid just followed his fulfillment, which is, I want to be a police officer, ends up in Congress, and the president of the United States gives him a high honor. Like,
Part of his purpose.
pretty magnetic,
It's a make-a-wish
I'm getting
moment.
chills.
Yeah.
I'm getting chills. But I mean, there's lots of kids that have cancer. There's lots of young people probably want to be in law enforcement or something. But how did that guy do that? He didn't think about it. He just was it.
Mm-hmm.
And you could tell he's a very loving sort of soul. You could see him ask permission of the Secret Service director. That's what I thought. He was like, may I give you a hug or can I hug you? And the Secret Service director said yes. And he hugged him. And, how can you not love that? I mean, that's like why we're all here, to love and learn and grow.
All right. Well, in just a moment, we're going to come back and we'll be sharing some more inspirational and magnetic stories for the last 10 weeks.
When you arrived back, you were enthusiastic to be here. If you've lost some of that enthusiasm, there's a way to reawaken it. It's by embracing a bigger spiritual picture of your life as a soul and igniting the feeling of freedom within. If you're ready and needing some more enthusiastic mojo for yourself, then follow the link in the show notes to access a free video series created by the Wayshowers College and get ready to start feeling more clarity, hope, and freedom within. Well, we're back and we've got another sharing. So Tiger, hit it off. What you want to talk about for the last 10 weeks and what's been going on?
Yeah, I mean, there was a lot of great stories the last 10 weeks that we've done this. And so some of the highlights for me, one is something that's actually current, but it's just hasn't been talked about as much, although you see people kind of showing their solidarity, is the Pope. The Pope is a bit ill, more than a bit ill. And so there's a sense that he's going to pass on right now. But we actually did that story way back.
Yeah, one of the early episodes.
One of the earliest, and we picked that up really early. That the energy's starting to shift, right? The energy's starting to shift. There was something there, and to me that was it's a great confirmation. Not the fact that he's passing on; it's the fact that because he has a lot of backing. There's a lot of spiritual backing there. But it was the fact that because we were just in this place where we were regrouping it, where we were just using our sensitivity, which is another powerful reason why we suggest you use those the video series down below. I mean, it's trust me, it's worth it.
Get introduced to it.
Yeah, it's amazing. And when you have that big picture, but it was a great confirmation that we were picking something up, and then here it starts to show up. And so to me, that was one of the highlights, I would say, from just a quick one before I go finish the list, is just the ability to work work based on what's going on out there and discern, discerning news, right? That's the name of the thing. Mm-hmm. Discern where the energy's going so I know how to work with it. And the final part with that, before I ask you to share on that, is with that shift. Here's an example, right? Here's an example of this right now. So right now, he's organizing himself to move on. The Pope is. So what does that mean energetically for people who are sensitive to that, or the people around that faith system? It means that there's going to be transition, right? So if I'm not aware of that, if I don't discern that early, I can get caught in the transition. And then I can go through the ups and downs and challenges of it, rather than I'm sensing something coming here. Or I've got to, I can see this, or I can hear this, I can know this, I can feel this. It's get a sense for it. Now I can work with it. I know how to. Right now is going to be a great time for me to be strong in my leadership, for me to be clear in my cleansing, to me to be able to share positive direction with people. Like for the next couple of weeks, that's going to be a good thing, because as that transition happens before they pick the next pope, that's the energy that's going to be needed, right? So that's the first thing that stands out to me of a few here. But anything you pick up on about that?
Well, it's interesting because the time frame right now we're in a shifting of the every 3 months we've got we've got the equinox coming up, and so that's a really big time for we come into spring, and the southern hemisphere comes into fall, right? Yeah. So recognizing that, how you're mentioning about the sensitivity in the seasons of change, and for us in doing spring, it's about rebirth, it's about new things are starting to grow, things are starting to sprout again. So it's an interesting time frame when people do pass. As a matter of fact, this past week was the 33rd year of my dad passing on. So there's something around this month of there's like an energy of it's you can come in, you can move out. And so I think that's one of the things too, that being sensitive to what's going on in the seasons that we're all among, in, and how that also relates to what you might be going through in your own life, or like the Pope and the Catholics and all that's going to be going on, and we as sensitive also feel it.
For me, this gets to my third point. Boy, this is pretty magical on the card. We wrote some things down before. I didn't know how I was going to arrive here, but, we trust our sensitivity and spirit. I was sharing earlier that my sensitivity, really when I ask myself, I know how things are going to play out. And this is another one of those examples. So in my story about the checks and balances, I knew how things were going to play out, and I had a sense for which ones are going to probably go forward and which orders will probably get, stifled in some way and then go forward. And, when the big story was Zelensky, and Trump, how, they discontinued the signing for the mineral rights and the negotiations and so forth for peace. But really, in my sensitivity told me he'll be back. And then people can say, well, logically, how much of a choice does he have, and in terms of where Europe's at and so on and so forth. But honestly, it takes a lot of stress out of it. I had a colleague come to one of our regroupings the other night, and she was saying, geez, with all the change, it's really stressing me out, And this is somebody that's been involved with spiritual things for quite a while, but let's not forget that we're sensitive, and just tune into your sensitivity. Get cleansed, use our cleansing techniques that we share with you in our Intuition Now class, and, become more aware of what you're picking up, because it's been a theme for me lately. It's just to say, truth is, in fact, I'm getting a little adamant about it. It's like, oh, I picked that up, because I'm reinforcing for myself that I picked it up weeks ago, or my sensitivity always lets me know where things are at, and to just relax and trust it. And then the big deals kind of disappear. It really strikes me, if they want to keep us jumping and under pressure, there aren't, those folks who are not going to want to reinforce that I have my answers, that I have my sensitivity. They're looking for a way to somehow maneuver me or manipulate me. Now, sometimes because they just don't know any better, but yeah, I love that. The sensitivity of how things will play out.
Well, and just to wrap up that point, was kind of coming into full circle, right? Is the other thing I was going to say is really starting to discern what is the headline and what is actually the meaning. So it's like, and you were bringing up the point of like, sometimes they'll throw this stuff, because the title of this is Discerning News, right? So in the news, they'll throw something out there that's spectacular. That's like, like, oh my God, that can't be true. What? oh no, or oh my gosh, something. And then if you actually start going down into it, and you actually, it's like your friend was saying that on the MSNBC thing, it's like, oh, well, that's not really what it, but it's the grabber, right?
Yeah.
It's what's going to grab you off the street and make you pay attention. So if I don't have that clear, that that's part of the game of life, that's part of the competition, and I'm not tuned into where I begin and end, right? What's me and not me, then I'm going to be running around like a chicken with his head cut off.
Right.
I'm going to be like all over the place. There, I mean, and then talk about the emotional roller coaster,
Yeah.
and then it's like an addiction. That's the, there's a part in the video series where it talks about communication and your emotions, and how if I get too much into that, if I get caught as a sensitive person, if I get caught into that, it really becomes, it's like a heroin. I just almost have to have it. And I don't feel satisfied if I don't get this emotional thing, right?
Yeah.
Whether it's the anger or the depression or a combination of the both, the high and the low, it's like it becomes, so if I'm not clear with where I begin and end and what I need to be doing, how quickly I can get caught up in all that. And so that's that whole headline versus the meaning. And part of it, and just as a kind of like, okay, what do I do right now? What's the practical? Part of it is utilizing things to benefit me. Meaning not a greedy me first, me second, me third thing. Like, okay, this is happening, or this is what the headline is, or let me get in a little bit. If that's interesting to me, let me go in a little bit and get the facts. And then how can I work with that? How do I utilize that energy for my benefit, to fulfill on my purpose, so that I can be of more service, I can be more abundant, how I can be more fun in my life? That's my take home from kind of the 10 weeks that we're doing this, is all this news is there for energy purposes to help me. That's it in the end. It's all, and I can be from that higher place, like a balloon floating up to a higher position, for me to be able to look at it, see it for what it is, instead of what it's supposed to be or what it should be. How often do we get caught up in that, right? I mean, it happens to me. That shouldn't be that way. That's not fair, right? Or whatever the trip is I'm on, right? But the moment I let myself float up like that balloon, all of a sudden, a lot of that electrical charge goes away, that emotional charge goes away, and I'm able to start naturally discerning what the need is. And it just really clarifies things. So that's the thing that just really stands out to me, is that discernment and being able to work with that.
Yeah, so no reason why we called it Discerning News, right?
Yeah.
Because as for myself too, and I share that in a lot of our classes we do, and the podcast and et cetera, is that discernment is key. I mean, to recognize what's my energy and how are other outside energies, other environments, the stories you hear every day, and how often do we hear story after story? How does that affect my energy? And if I don't know how to stay cleansed, and I don't know how to discern what I'm feeling, it's a shit show. I'll just straight up, it's a shit show. And I see and sense a lot of people still in that place, but I also get a sense that they're starting to go, wait, how can I work with what's going on here in a different way? Because the way that we've been working in the past is no longer serving us.
Right.
And when I discern what's going on, there's fulfillment there, because it leads to fulfillment. That's what I mean.
Yeah.
It leads to fulfillment because I can choose to be of service. Because there's fulfillment there. So, I can help. I can be a part of that love, positive, loving, caring vibration, that we all talk about. But if, even in business, the good business people, they don't really get too caught up in, oh no, this is going to disappear, but that's going to, it's more like, okay, the energy's moving from here to there. So let's go provide our service over there.
Right.
Or how do we tailor our service where there's a need? And, that's part of the challenge. It can be challenging at times,
Well, I mean,
but it's easier to get there if I let go of all the thinking around it and kerfuffle and just go, okay, I've got to auger over here now to be of service.
well, I keep sharing, but just wanted to tap in that energy
Yeah.
of service, right? We talk a lot about that, and there's other organizations that will talk about it spiritually, like it's coming in. Religions talk about being of service a lot, and there's a reason for that, because spiritually, being of service is the most effective and efficient method that we have here to learn and grow. It is of all things I can be, all my challenges I go through, because I'm going to learn one way or another, right? If I get in a hole and hurt myself or go broke, or, I'm really rich, I'm going to learn from all that. But being of service is the most effective and efficient method to learn and grow. And just to add, to be clear, to be of service means that it's a win-win situation. It's not I take and you have to take it, right? Mm-hmm. It means that I'm doing something, that you can get something out of it, and there's an exchange for that. So I just wanted your sparking it off as how powerful just to being of service is, and why that's spoke of in different religions and different groups, and anyone who has that touch of spiritual, why that's so important.
Well said. And so I think that's a good place to probably wind this up. So let's do a little prophetic visioning here for a moment.
All right.
And to go around to kind of get a sense of what do you feel is coming, and what's especially for our sharing and moving forward with the discerning news.
Sure. Well, for me, prophetically, I'd like to say that the energy that's here and coming, I've been bringing this up, start at the basics, is fundamentals. That everything's being guided back to the restoration of my foundation and my fundamentals. That's number one. And number two, from an actual practical, what do I do with it, is, to me, there's a sense of now, okay, it's time for me to start organizing something I can move forward with. So it's easy to get caught up in life. It's easy to get caught up with a bunch of different things, make myself spread too thin, or get off on a tangent where I have a lot of energy, but I'm off on a wrong direction. So it's a time right now to really start to bring that back to what I need to be a part of, and consolidate that and take a step, right? To start to trim out things that I don't need at this time, right? At this time. That way I don't have to worry, let the intellect take a break. I don't have to worry about it. At this time, I need to put this on the shelf and this on the shelf, and I'm going to put the energy into this. So to me, the prophetic feeling of what's here and coming is foundations and fundamentals, and then also start to refine that light, to focus that light that I have down to a beam, to a laser. So that's the feeling of everything moving forward now.
What about you, Tom?
For me, it's my prophetic vision is that we're going to start working in themes that we know that Spirit has given us, themes of the month, themes of the year, and also the energies that we're working with at different times. And now start relating more to those situations. And what's going to be great about that is other folks can kind of evaluate that from their perspective as well, as they can, for example, for March, the key word for the energy of March is resolve. And as other folks listen to us, they can put together what they're, putting together in light of some of the things we're sharing in terms of under that theme of resolve. And so that's what I see.
I like both of your prophetic views.
What about you, Miss Teresa?
What about me? I'll take D, all the above. Mm-hmm. And I'm just, honored to be able to come together with you guys and, do this sharing every week. And thank you, all of you out there who are watching and listening and sharing with other people, because the more that we can get out amongst, we'll say muggles or the regular people, that there is a spiritual perspective to everything, and there's a way that you can really look at and discern news in a a more neutral, balanced way versus one side or the other. It's like it's all just, one way, and it can be really, what I want to say, amplified in a new sense versus what we've been used to for the last however long, right?
Right.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
finding hope for myself radiates out so that others can feel that hope.
And trusting in my sensitivity is a great way to start.
Absolutely.
So until next week, which will be number 12, thank you again for listening and watching and discerning news. And make sure that whatever you're listening to out in the world, you have a little spiritual perspective to go along with it. And we'll see you again soon. To keep the enthusiasm going, please like, subscribe, or comment below. We would love to hear from you.